Welcome everyone to today's Winning Together podcast. My name is Shay the Coach Aslet. Across from me I've got Jared the Clinician Casey. How are you today, Jared?
Doing well, Shay. How are you?
So outstanding. Today we in this podcast we want to battle back against burnout. We're going to talk about being trained or untrained. What do you do when you're confronted with a recovery experience that isn't going exactly how you want it? The conditional recovery experience. Let's talk about that as well. So we've got the clinician Jared. Jared's going to give us some highlight and some backstory on kind of what he's seeing from a clinician perspective. And I'm the coach, so I'm going to ask him, and we're going to talk about the what things you do in your life to have a different experience, to get a different result, to become alive again and connect. So tell me what you're seeing, Jared, in your work or from a personal lens.
Yeah, I think I'll start with work. I like to do a little casework here and talk about what's happening in the actual realm of recovery right now. And one of my clients has got over a year of clean time, which is a huge success in recovery. And that's one of the first major goals we set, is getting to that year mark. Of course, it's every day at a time, but he had some huge goals for himself. He'd set these big goals, and he'd kind of had some expectations that when he was able to become different, when he worked through his anger, when he worked through his pride, when he worked through his addictions, that certain things would happen for him. And they seemed to be doing that for a while. He seemed to be getting really good booms in his career, his family life, and other areas. However, a storm came, a big storm, which always seems to happen, and his anchors weren't set deep enough, and he fell and crashed, but didn't crash all the way to the bottom. And that was one of the pieces that he took some joy in, was, hey, I didn't go all the way down, and I've got a head full of recovery now. It's really hard to not live in that. It's really hard to live in that space and fall all the way down and have all this knowledge. So, to his credit, that was great. But on the flip side, he's really struggling with where to go now, and is it really worth it? So that tended to be our last conversation. Well, is this really worth it? Are you willing to continue to build, or did your plateau and your backslide and your crash in the storm devastate you to the point where you don't want to try anymore? So seeing that kind of come up in clients as they burn out too. You can burn out in recovery. Like, I've been doing this so long, I've been trying so hard. Why is this not working? And to identify some of those, why is this not working and how can we do different, is really important. And in his case, there were some things that fell off that were critical. Number one that we were able to identify was gratitude. He'd stopped practicing gratitude in his daily routine, which was huge for him. And then kind of another piece was he had made some major shifts in deciding, okay, I'm going to get back into relationships now. I've been out of the dating scene, out of the relationship scene for a while, but now I'm back into it. So shifting back into picking up those old pieces of life and trying to figure out how to do them really caught him off guard. So from a clinician's view, looking at, all right, let's work through the hurt of your life, because this is hurtful, this is hard. There's a lot of things that are popping up that you could say are distractions that you could get lost in. So I'm working from his hurt perspective and getting him back around to picking up those pieces and resetting his anchors. How do you see that, Shay, as a coach? Like, we've got this side of it going on here. Now what do we do with him? How do we take it to the next step?
I think, first of all, one of the things that you don't want to just glide over, that you acknowledge too, is, hey, you called. You're doing different already than you had done it when you've had previous hurricanes hit like you did this one. So his life looks like the Bahamas right now, right? And it looks like it's destroyed, except in the Bahamas, they have plans and preparation. They've been this before. They've seen it. They've done it. And the bounce back would be way different than if Salt Lake City got hit by a hurricane. Bouncing back would be terribly difficult because they've never seen it before. So for him to say, I'm trained and to look at this and even himself acknowledge that I'm doing different in the moment, that you're in the hurt, but you're kind of able to look at yourself in the third person and be like, hey, me, I'm doing great. I'm doing different. Wow, this really sucks. Yep. And you're not going to numb out, use, complain. Yeah, venting and discussing is part of it. But also, if you're not ready for feedback, just the willingness to share and discuss sets you up to be open for that kind of insight or even self awareness that you didn't have before.
Yeah, and I think it's valued that even if someone isn't ready to, like you said, start doing those different things or changing them, like he's done some great things. He's reached out. He's seeking help from trusted people. I can imagine if he were coming into a fresh relationship with a new clinician or a new coach, it would take a long time to get through all the distractions. And in just meeting with him, he had a lot of distractions he wanted to throw up. You know, we want to talk about all these different things like they're important, but they're not the things that are causing the hurt, that are perpetuating the problem that continues to come up. So having that alliance with a coach or with a clinician that's been able to continue through some time, we can kind of cut right into it.
Yeah, you're not getting distracted by the smoke. You're going right to the fire.
Mm-hmm. And that was something really valued today, is I was able to feel his pain, be there present with his pain, and acknowledge the hurt. And we had a really powerful connecting session where he was able to kind of start to rebalance and get his feet right. And he even acknowledged, hey, I didn't fall all the way to the bottom. I'm proud of myself. Hey, I reached out. I'm proud of myself. Which that kind of language didn't exist in him.
The acknowledgement is, so if that's what you're hearing, then the internal dialogue is so much better than it was at a previous point in time. Just the acknowledgement. One of the things I noticed with clients too is I have to get them to stop saying try, and no, you're doing it. Mm-hmm. You're not trying to do anything right now. You're actually doing it. That the storm comes, that's life, that's inevitable, that's part of what we signed up for and why we're here. So it's not avoiding the storms, or I've seen this a lot, the conditional recovery. It's not just people who are recovering from substances. Human beings want their lives and their good works to be conditional on, I will say sorry if I get an apology, or I will do that if I get the bonus, or I will be nice to my spouse if I get great sex. No, that's not how it works. You do it because that's who you are. You get out of life who you are, not what you want.
No, I love that. I love that perspective. One way I've looked at that is we call that I'll be happy when. Mm-hmm. And it's just another trap people get stuck in. I'll be happy when my career works. I'll be happy when.
I love how you said that, just so matter of fact. It's just another trap.
It's just a trap. That's all it is. And part of that recognition is being aware of those traps. And when you engage with an accountability partner, a coach, a counselor, a 12-step meeting, a recovery meeting of any kind, what you're really doing is you're allowing other people to help you see your traps and help you see where to step, how to work through this, and how to actually make it through this battlefield, because it can be really hard. It is really hard.
It is hard. Yeah. And hard is hard, and we all have it. If you want to feel joyful and happy and fulfilled, you got to do hard. And the great thing about winning together is I can see your blind spots, you can see mine, but I can't see mine, you can't see your own as well. Mm-hmm. And when you allow others to win with you, they'll say, hey, that's in your blind spot. You're totally doing this, you're deflecting, you're looking at stuff that isn't real, it doesn't matter. Or, hey, you just need to focus on this. You're not doing your part. Or I see what you're doing. When you're ready, let's tackle it.
And I think that when you're ready part is powerful. Like today, he wasn't ready to, problem solve and seek a ton of solutions, but he was ready to be aware of those blind spots. And he kind of already was seeing them or feeling them, but these distractions were coming up to say, let's keep them in the peripheral, so we really don't become aware of them. It's like when someone comes in a room that you hope they didn't see you or you didn't see them, and you try to ignore it. So it's that space in which, can I be aware of my heart today? And so many of us want to distract. We want to keep going on whatever tangent we can, and that's where a lot of the burnout comes.
So I don't want to lose the emphasis here on the distraction, but before we go, one of the things that I think is also valuable is when you become trained. Have you ever seen the movie A Man on Fire with Denzel Washington?
Love that show.
Okay, I love it. One of the big aha moments in that movie for me was when he's talking to PETA and he wants to train her to swim. And he's like, there's trained and untrained. I've really adopted that in my life. And when you are trained, you can also see the traps in other people. And that's one of the ways you become more self-aware. Like, oh, that person's doing that. Oh, that they're trying to get away with this other. Oh, they're getting distracted with that. And you're able then to apply to yourself, like, no, I'm a problem solver. I'm not a victim or a villain. I'm going to go ahead and move forward. And I can see those better in other people as well.
Yeah, one of the popular words we use in recovery is you spot it, you got it.
Oh, so, I love that.
So you can see it, I can see it. Now, just because you can see it doesn't mean someone's ready to run with the advice you're about to give them or run with the suggestions or the insights you're going to share. It's that awareness piece. Okay, am I aware of this yet? So finding that we can just be present with someone, meet them where they're at, love them as they are, share with them the human experience. They tend to allow those awareness pieces to kind of come from the inside out.
Okay.
Somewhere inside us, we know where we're missing the mark.
Yep.
And as someone's just present with us and they don't necessarily judge us, they don't criticize us, but they're aware with us, then those pieces actually can be worked on and have some resolution around them.
I'm sure you know this already, but when you said missing the mark, I thought of the original word that the word sin comes from, hamartian, which is missing the mark. So when you're sinning, you're just missing the mark. You're not getting to where you want to be or need to or want to. So let's go to this distraction part. And I got to tell you, something you said is really powerful for me. So one of the ways, and you know what I've been listening to recently in my meditation practice on the Headspace app is the one they did with the NBA, and it's about change. And just yesterday, it was talking about change. You can't force change. You can't want it to be a certain way. It just is, and it happens as it happens. And that's kind of like what you're talking about here. When you're experiencing burnout or you're experiencing adversity, sometimes you want it to be a certain way. Well, I can deal with this type of burnout, but if it's this type of burnout, that's not good. Or if it's this type of problem, I can deal with it. Just you can spot it and you got it doesn't mean that the relationship you don't have with your son doesn't hurt as bad, or that your money problems have just gone away, or that you don't need to challenge them. But one of the ways that I know that I particularly hurt my wife is I will see her, but I won't acknowledge her. And when you talk about the burnout and you said, I'll see it, but I won't acknowledge it, like it comes in the room, but I won't acknowledge it, that's a really important distinction for me. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think in recovery terms, we carry a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame that comes with not living with virtue and integrity, living with really good, sound moral principles, because a lot of those go to the wayside in addiction. Now, in regular life too, that can happen in business and other areas of your life. You can start to let go of those things that really ground you as a good, fundamental human being. So, as we're seeking recovery, we're seeking a better life, we have to work on those things that increase our integrity, increase our honesty, increase our trust. And it's a spotlight. We can instantly feel, all right, if I'm going to work on my integrity, that means people now are going to they're going to expect me to do what I say, and I'm going to do what I tell them I'm going to do. So there's also this pressure, perceived pressure, if you want to call it that you have to live at a higher standard.
And owning that's no small thing. It's a big deal. And so don't take it lightly, or if it's hard, don't diss yourself. It's hard to be different.
It's hard, and it can be excused away. So a distraction can be, well, I don't care what people think. Well, that's fine.
You should love me as I am.
You should love me as I am. That's fine too, if we're talking about judgment. But we're not talking about judgment. We're talking about growth. So as a human being that wants to grow, I'm going to practice integrity. And I'm going to practice being honest. I'm going to practice building trust. And that also means I have to let go of gossip and blame and shame and all these other distractions.
Mm-hmm.
So every time we start to lean into practicing good integrity and good trust and good things like this, we also have to shine a spotlight back on ourselves and allow people to see us. And that can hurt. And this little shame monster in the back of our minds, or wherever you want to call it a demon, it's going to say, no, you're not good enough. You aren't trusted. You shouldn't do that. You need to let that crap go. You're not that person. You shouldn't pretend to be a bishop. You shouldn't pretend to be this good person. You shouldn't pretend to be the holier than thou. So then it starts to reframe it in that judgment language. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about judgment. So don't frame it that way for yourself. Frame it for growth.
Wow, what a great... Like, if you're listening, I need you to go back and just listen to the last minute and a half. That is such a really, just an important distinction. And when you get caught up in the judgment argument, you get caught up in the judgment argument and not grow and not progress and not connect with your life, not, make amends with your important relationships, etc. That's a very good distinction. I like to think of it as workability. If your life's not working, just focus on that. Don't let go of, don't hold on to whether it's right or wrong or whatever, meaning, like you said, it's not the judgment thing. It's, is your life working or is it not?
And if you need a little help with that, ask your closest friends and family. Hey, what's working? What's not working? Can you help me see some of this? So pull in an accountability partner, and everybody around you can totally see those things that you're probably but you're not letting them be aware in your life. And if you let them in a little bit, and you don't take it from a judgment point of view, the constructive criticism, like, well, I don't believe in that. Well, yeah, if you're coming off as judgment, sure. But if you've got your spouse, your friends, your family saying, yeah, honey, when I loan you money and you never pay me back, it kind of blows our trust. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I just thought, since we're friends, we don't ask for money, like whatever. So from small to huge, when you step in my house and you bring drugs and you're down in my basement getting high and you overdosed and the police showed up and all the neighbors saw and I feel this shame now and I didn't know you were doing that and blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've got 45 different judgments and hard things to deal with. Yeah, we probably should address that at some point.
Yeah, it's gonna take a little while for me to say sorry or accept your apology just because you want it right now.
And what will be said is, well, my mom or my dad, they're really religious and they don't accept me as I am. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not really true. They just don't necessarily want you to get high and die on their couch, like at the very base level. But if you were practicing integrity and being honest and practicing forgiveness and making amends, then responsibility, you're going to eventually have to address all those things. Now, on the flip side, people aren't always willing to address them with us. Mom and dad might be very comfortable with hiding your addiction for you. Now they're enabling you. And they're just not ready, or they're not going to be ready. And because they're not ready doesn't mean you can't start treating them with respect and responsibility, and doesn't mean you can't treat them in a way that you wish your relationship was. And practicing that section of integrity.
And although it may feel like a good excuse, it's still an excuse to not practice your recovery and be a whole and healthy and happy human being.
Oh, and what a pit it is. So often people will fall into that. Well, until my mom figures me out, or until my husband or my friend or my cousin or whoever gets me, then we can have a relationship. It's not true. You have to have a relationship with yourself first. You have to practice integrity with yourself first, build trust first. And then as you do those things, other people in your life are much more likely to do it back. But it's up to them.
That's a really big deal. Okay, another movie that I love for this statement, and it's Two for the Money. It's Matthew McConaughey and Al Pacino, and he's a sports bettor, and he's doing really, really good. And his mentor, Al Pacino, says, "Okay, we're doing really good. Now it's time to full court press." And he's like, "No, we're doing great. I can't lose. I'm perfect." I've learned also when I feel like I've got that attitude that coming on, like, hey, I'm going. Everything's good. I got lined up. I can't lose. I've learned okay, it's time to full court press. It's time to go in. How does that apply to kind of what you're talking about with recovery or burnout?
Well, just to kind of go off that same sports analogy, you hear it a lot in playing not to lose.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're up in the end and you're being too conservative. Like, you have to allow yourself to play the game of life. You have to step into the arena, as Brene Brown says, and experience vulnerability and experience the pressure of doing good or doing different or doing hard to grow. All the growth happens in the uncomfortable space. When you're in your comfortable, you're not growing. You're plateaued, which is enough some days, or you're sliding back, which is devastating in other days. So in that burnout space, you have to be willing to feel the burnout and feel the pain and feel the depressing feelings and feel this, whatever that is. And for me personally, I have to be willing to engage in my higher power. I have to be willing to let my family in to my pain. Let them know, let them see me cry, let them see me hurt, let them see me feel. And I can go back and look at why I don't do that naturally. Like, I got plenty of trauma in my childhood and other things that have locked me up in so many ways. But for me to grow, it's so much harder for me to be uncomfortable and be vulnerable than it is for me just to be an angry a-hole.
Sure.
I can do that easy any day.
Ego loves that. Some of it's justified and okay, acceptable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you want rock star relationships, you want to be a rock star dad, and you do a rock star business, it's not acceptable. It's not even close to cutting it. So when you're talking about asking for feedback from other people and having them help you see, like, hey, here's where you can improve, something that's allowed me to disarm some of that is, it's not about me. It's not about me. And what is it really about? It's about what you really want. Your client you had earlier, the reason it's worth going through all this and feeling and trying to solve these problems is because the life he's fighting for is bigger than the one he has had, and that's worth fighting for. The level of self you want to be at is worth fighting for, and experiencing whatever you're feeling now and being burned out, or sharing it with your family, or crying, or experiencing whatever's coming up. But as you allow that to happen, you acknowledge it. You don't just see it, it's in the room, but you acknowledge it. I see you. I want, like, what I'm feeling with you right now and doing, it's worth it because what I want is bigger, better, brighter, and it's almost always not including just you. It's not just for you. It's for your family. It's for your business. It's for your clients, etc.
Well, and it kind of goes back to trained or untrained. When you have one of the famous sayings is a head full of recovery, it's really not fun to live that way anymore. You do see all the
What do you mean by a head full of recovery?
So if you've been trained, you've learned about coping skills, you've learned about meditation, you've learned about the damage and horrible things that having bad communication and dysfunction do for your life, and you get clean and healthy, and you go back out and use, and you try to go back to all those old thinking patterns of, well, I'm going to blame so-and-so, or I'm going to do that, and I'm justified in using because I'm a loser, or whatever it is. All of a sudden you're like, well, I have coping skills for this. I have skills for this. I know I can't blame people anymore. I have to take accountability for my life. It's not fun. It's not fun. You now have a therapist curse. You can see clearly. The blindfold is off. And look around the room, and the party is really just a bunch of people who are struggling. And now you're like, oh man, what am I doing?
Back here. You're back at where you said you wouldn't be anymore.
Took out the party time. Not a party anymore. Have fun with that.
So where do you go from there?
You have to either change or stay ignorant. And a personal example, I've been really looking into bettering my relationship with Mother Earth. And a way that I see that is not wasting as much stuff. And I came across some information recently that recycling in America isn't really functioning that well. For different reasons, it's not functioning that well. So when I go to recycle anything, which I've felt good about in the past, and I know that there's a high probability that's just going to go in a landfill, I feel guilt. I have a head full of knowledge that this plastic water bottle is going to go in a landfill. So now every time I let that go into even a recycle can, I feel a little bit of guilt. So now I'm more conscious to bring a glass water bottle and fill it up wherever I go. And then as I get my groceries, and I learn about single use plastic and how it's filling up the oceans, and my role in that is to not use single use plastics and do a better job at using other things. Now I always feel guilt, and I can either block that guilt out and say, well, it doesn't really matter, or who cares, and try to just live normal, or I can make changes. And I've looked at myself as I have to do changes gradually. I can't do it all at once. I don't know how. Knowledge isn't there yet, so I got to get more knowledge. B, it's not as accessible. It's so much easier to be wasteful. And C and D and E and F, do I really care enough to do different?
To give an F.
To give an F. And so as I really let myself go through that training, thinking, feeling process, I do care. Maybe not in that moment, though.
So I want you guys to make sure you connect the dots there. So we went from kind of going from burnout to a way that you've identified you maintain integrity with yourself is, hey, you know what, this has been coming up for me. Making sure that I'm being a good steward of the resources that I've been entrusted with and that I have access to, not only being better at that and being more aware, but you also share that with me. And so you're letting other people know, hey, this is important to me. I'm sharing this and I'm doing different. These are changes. So you can either be accountable, you can pick your battles better, because maybe this is a battle that you want to do as much as you can, but you can't do it all the way yet. But you start learning how to start being more you, and your burnout starts resolving itself. Your plateaus start becoming now progress, or your storms now start becoming the place where you build better and stronger and healthier off of.
And you dig in deeper anchors, and you do it differently. And as you start to create these patterns, so for me, when I feel burnout, I realize, I'm doing too much on my own. I'm trying too hard on my own, and my pride is probably spiked a little bit. My ego is probably spiked a little bit. My resentment's probably spiked a little bit. And I have to kind of reground myself and recognize that I'm not here alone. We do this together. We win together. I win with my family. I win with my higher power. I win with God. I win with you and me. And that kind of recenters me and helps me get through it. And just sharing the human experience. Other people feel the same way. In America, there's a ton of burnout. People feel it all over. So,
all right, we'll wrap this up in just a minute. So, what I mentioned earlier, that one of the ways that I learned that I hurt my wife is I would not acknowledge her when I'm in the same room with her. So, it's first of all, becoming aware that I was doing, acknowledging that I was doing it. Not just to myself, but to her as well. Like, hey, this is one way that I know that I can especially hurt you because I know you, is I don't look at you, I don't acknowledge you. And so what the practice now around that becomes, I make sure to see her, touch. There's a lot of just touching, hugging, hi, kissing, and then especially on days that we are in conflict or confrontation, we've allowed ourselves like, hey, just because I want to hug you right now or touch you or acknowledge you doesn't mean that stuff's ignored. It's just we're just putting it on the table for a minute while we make sure what we really want is a rock star relationship. And that's what we're fighting for. And as we fight for that, we're able to come back and solve those other problems that come out. So what do you really want? It's not about you. Is your life workable? Experience it. Feel it. Beware of the distractions. Trained or untrained. Full court press. Like, there's a lot of really good takeaways in today's podcast.
Yeah, and if you're out there and if you're feeling burnout in any way in your life, either in recovery or any other area of your life, first thing you need to know is that's normal. Like, normalize that.
Well said.
It's normal. And part B to that is it's okay to experience that and let yourself be in it. It's us trying to distract or trying to run from our problems or keep the TV on too long or not feel
or force it.
That's where our real issues are spiking. Everybody feels burnout. Everyone feels this. So instead of going to those old patterns that have become wasteful acts, allow yourself to feel present, feel, and then allow yourself to do different. And a way that we're seeing that is, what are you really fighting for? Know what you want to the point it becomes a desire. And then when it's a desire, you know what you desire, you create that. And if you need help with that, we're here for you. There's tons of resources. That's really all it is creation. You create that space in your life for something different, something to fight for, and you'll achieve it, but probably not alone.
Well, it's not going to be alone, and smaller the better. Like for you, recycling water bottles. Okay, or not using those. Small. Look for small ways to start affecting that change. Bring it about. I love it. We win together. Jared, the clinician Casey, thank you. This is Shay, the coach Aslet, and have a great day. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Thank you.